The golden hour light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor, casting long shadows across the mahogany conference table where 200 of America's most influential investors sat in rapt attention. Diana Richardson stood at the head of the room, her platinum blonde hair pulled into a flawless chignon. Her tailored charcoal Armani suit worth more than most people's monthly salary. At 34, she commanded this room with the same precision that had transformed her AI startup from a college dorm idea into a company valued at $500 million. Gentlemen, ladies, her voice cut through the silence like crystal. What you're seeing isn't just artificial intelligence. This is the future of medical diagnosis, capable of detecting cardiac abnormalities with 97% accuracy. The holographic display behind her showed complex algorithms dancing in three-dimensional space, each calculation representing millions of dollars in potential revenue. The room erupted in murmurs of approval. Diana's ice-blue eyes scanned the faces before her, calculating, measuring their interest like a chess master reading the board. This was her element. This was control. The camera slowly pans to show a figure in gray custodial uniform, quietly collecting trash from the back of the room. Dr. Michael Torres, whose keen dark eyes caught every technical detail of Diana's presentation, his medical training automatically identifying flaws in her cardiac algorithm that her MIT-educated team had missed. 40 floors below, in the building's basement maintenance office, Michael pulled on his gray custodial uniform, the fabric rough against hands that had once performed microsurgery on human hearts. At 35, his broad shoulders still filled out the uniform well, though the designer suits that once defined him were long gone. His dark hair, now cut short and practical, showed the first threads of silver at the temples, premature aging from stress that no amount of rest could erase. "Daddy, you forgot your sandwich again." Sophia's voice drifted from the break room, where she sat doing homework at a folding table, her legs swinging from a chair too tall for her 8-year-old frame. Her long brown hair fell in gentle waves past her shoulders, and her hazel eyes, so much like her mother's, held an intelligence that constantly surprised adults. Michael smiled, the first genuine expression to cross his face all day. "What would I do without you, sweetheart?" "Starve, probably." Sophia's practical delivery made him chuckle as he accepted the carefully wrapped peanut butter sandwich. "Remember, you're still Dr. Torres in your heart. The uniform doesn't change who you really are." These moments with Sophia were what kept him anchored. 2 years ago, when the malpractice lawsuit had destroyed everything he'd built, when the medical board had stripped his license despite ultimately proving his innocence, when the crushing debt from Elena's cancer treatment had forced them from their suburban home into a cramped Brooklyn apartment, Sophia had been his lighthouse in the storm. The elevator chimed softly as Diana's presentation concluded 3 hours later. The investors filed out, their conversations buzzing with acquisition talk and IPO speculation. Diana remained behind, loosening her perfectly knotted silk scarf as she reviewed her notes. Success had its price, and hers was paid in 18-hour days and relationships that never quite took root. She gathered her papers, several folders sliding to the floor in her exhaustion. The cleaning crew would handle it. They always did. Invisible people doing invisible work that kept her world spinning smoothly. At 11:15 p.m., the building settled into its after-hours quiet. Diana had sent her assistant home hours ago, preferring the solitude of empty corridors where she could think without interruption. The elevator hummed softly as she pressed the button for the parking garage, her mind already racing through tomorrow's board meeting agenda. Then the lights flickered. The elevator shuddered once, twice, then stopped completely between the 23rd and 24th floors. "No, no, no!" Diana's voice cracked as she jabbed the emergency button repeatedly. The small space suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in like the twisted metal of her parents' car 20 years ago. Her breathing quickened, became shallow. The familiar taste of copper filled her mouth as panic rose in her chest like a living thing. She was 15 again, trapped in the back seat while sirens wailed in the distance, her father's blood pooling on the dashboard, her mother's hand growing cold in hers. The claustrophobia that had haunted her since that night wrapped around her throat like a vice. "Help!" she whispered, then louder. "Help!" Michael was making his final security rounds when he heard the muffled shouting. 20 years of emergency medical training kicked in instantly. He located the elevator shaft, pressed his ear to the door. "Ma'am, can you hear me? This is building security. What's your name?" "Diana," she gasped between ragged breaths. "Diana Richardson. I can't breathe properly." "Diana, I'm Michael. You're having a panic attack, but you're safe. I need you to listen to my voice and follow my instructions exactly." His tone carried the calm authority of someone who had talked people through life or death moments. "First, place your hand on your chest and feel your heart beat. Tell me what you feel." "Racing," she managed. "Too fast." "That's normal. Now breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 6. Follow my count." He began a steady rhythm, his voice penetrating the fog of her terror. Minutes passed as he guided her through the breathing exercises, occasionally asking questions to keep her focused. "Better," she finally whispered. "Good. Now I'm going to get you out of there." Michael's fingers found the manual override panel, his movements sure and practiced. The mechanical engineering courses he'd taken during medical school, knowledge he'd never expected to use again, came flooding back. Within 10 minutes, the elevator lurched back to life. When the doors opened, Diana stumbled out, her usually perfect appearance disheveled, mascara smudged beneath eyes, still wide with residual fear. She found herself looking up at a man whose calm competence seemed entirely at odds with his custodial uniform. Someone whose intelligent brown eyes held depths that spoke of experiences far removed from emptying trash cans. As Diana caught her breath, she noticed Michael automatically checking her pulse at her wrist, a practiced medical gesture that lasted only seconds, but revealed training no janitor should possess. "Thank you," she breathed, the words carrying weight she rarely allowed herself to feel. "I don't usually, that is, I'm not normally." "You don't need to explain anything, Miss Richardson. Are you steady enough to drive home?" Before Diana could respond, running footsteps echoed through the corridor. Sophia appeared around the corner, her backpack bouncing as she hurried toward them. "Daddy, I'm sorry I'm late. Mrs. Chen's meeting ran over and—" She stopped abruptly, taking in the scene with the sharp perception that children possess. "Is the lady okay?" "She got stuck in the elevator, sweetheart. This is Ms. Richardson. Diana, this is my daughter, Sophia." Sophia studied Diana with serious eyes, then stepped forward with the fearless compassion of childhood. "Being scared is normal. Daddy says when people are frightened, kindness works better than knowledge." For the first time in months, Diana felt something crack in the armor she wore so carefully. This child, with her matter-of-fact wisdom and her father's calm presence, had somehow reached through the walls Diana had built around herself. "Thank you, Sophia. That's very wise." Diana's voice was softer now, more human. "Daddy's full of good advice. He used to be a doctor, so he knows about healing people." Sophia's innocent pride in her father was unmistakable. Michael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We should let Miss Richardson get home. It's been a long day." But as Diana walked to her car, she found herself glancing back at the man and child. Something about their easy intimacy, the way they moved together like a perfectly choreographed dance, stirred a longing she had buried beneath years of corporate ambition. That night, as she lay in her penthouse bedroom overlooking Central Park, Diana couldn't shake the image of capable hands and a voice that had pulled her back from the edge of panic. She had built her life around control, around never needing anyone. Tonight, she had needed someone, and they had appeared exactly when she needed them most. The next morning brought autumn's crisp promise to Manhattan, golden leaves swirling past Diana's office windows as she arrived at 6 a.m., 2 hours before her usual schedule. The encounter in the elevator had left her unsettled, hyper-aware of her surroundings in a way that felt both uncomfortable and oddly reassuring. She found a small note tucked beneath her office door, written in precise handwriting that somehow managed to be both masculine and elegant. Ms. Richardson, I noticed you left some presentation materials in conference room A last evening. They're secured in building lost and found. M. Torres, security. Diana frowned. She hadn't realized she'd left anything behind. But Michael was right. Her folder containing the backup algorithms for her medical AI was missing from her briefcase. The fact that he'd noticed such a detail, that he'd taken the care to secure it personally rather than leaving it for the day shift, struck her as unusual. When she retrieved the folder, she found another surprise tucked inside. A small sticky note with a question written in the same careful script. Have you considered cardiac output variability in premature infants? The algorithm might need adjustment for pediatric parameters. Also, your stress test protocols may miss women-specific symptoms. Diana stared at the note. The observations were not only correct, but revealed a level of medical knowledge that seemed impossible for building security to possess. She spent the next hour reviewing her code, confirming what the note had suggested. Her AI would indeed struggle with pediatric cases under 6 months and had a significant blind spot for female cardiac events. How had a security guard noticed what her team of MIT graduates had missed? That afternoon, as Sophia waited in the lobby after school for Michael to finish his shift, Diana found herself taking the elevator to the ground floor instead of the parking garage. She told herself she wanted to thank Michael properly for his help, but the truth was more complicated. Sophia sat in a corner of the marble lobby, her homework spread across a small table the building manager had grudgingly provided. She was working through what appeared to be advanced mathematics problems, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. That looks challenging, Diana said, settling into the chair across from her. It's just algebra, Sophia replied without looking up. Daddy taught me. He says numbers are like music. They follow patterns, and once you understand the patterns, you can predict the harmony. Your father taught you algebra? Daddy teaches me lots of things. He says learning is the one gift nobody can ever steal from you. Sophia finally looked up, her hazel eyes serious. He also says you shouldn't judge people by their clothes or their jobs. The most important qualities in a person aren't visible on the surface. Before Diana could respond, Michael appeared from the service elevator, still in his custodial uniform, but somehow carrying himself with a dignity that transformed the simple gray fabric into something respectable. Ms. Richardson, his voice held polite surprise. I hope everything was in order with your presentation materials. More than in order, your notes were remarkably insightful. I was wondering if you might have a moment to discuss them. Michael's expression grew guarded. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. The comments about cardiac output variability and gender-specific stress responses. They were correct, and they saved my company from potentially serious oversights. Sophia looked between the two adults with interest. Are you going to tell her about your doctor days, Daddy? Sophia, Michael's voice carried gentle warning. What doctor days? Diana's business instincts sharpened. She hadn't built a successful company without learning to read people, and Michael Torres was hiding something significant. Michael was quiet for so long that Diana thought he wouldn't answer. Then, with the resigned air of someone who had carried a secret too long, he said, I used to practice medicine, cardiac surgery. The words hit Diana like a physical blow. Used to? Things change. His tone suggested the conversation was over, but Diana's mind was racing. A cardiac surgeon working as building security didn't just happen. There was a story here, and every instinct told her it was important. Daddy lost his license because of bad people who lied about him, Sophia said with the fierce protectiveness of a child defending her parent. But he won in court. He just couldn't afford to fight anymore after Mommy got sick. Michael's face went pale. Sophia, that's enough. But Diana's expression had softened, understanding beginning to dawn. Your wife? Cancer. The word came out rough, weighted with grief. Elena fought for 2 years. The treatment costs, insurance covered the basics, but experimental therapy, clinical trials, the kind of care that might have saved her. He shrugged, the gesture encompassing loss too vast for words. I'm sorry, Diana said, and meant it. It was a long time ago. But the way his hand automatically reached for Sophia's shoulder suggested the wound was still tender. That evening, Diana found herself researching Dr. Michael Torres instead of reviewing quarterly projections. What she discovered made her chest tight with indignation. An accomplished cardiac surgeon, published researcher in medical device security, destroyed by a malpractice suit that was ultimately proven frivolous. The plaintiff had been seeking a settlement, but Michael had refused to pay for something he hadn't done. The legal battle had cost him everything. His savings depleted by Elena's medical bills, his reputation tarnished by the accusations, his medical license suspended during the investigation. In her research, Diana discovered that the law firm that had pursued the malpractice case against Michael was the same firm now representing Tech Titan Corp., her company's biggest competitor. The connection seemed too convenient to be coincidental. The next week brought an unexpected crisis that would test everything Diana thought she knew about loyalty and betrayal. She arrived at her office Monday morning to find her assistant, Jennifer, waiting with an expression of barely contained panic. Diana, we have a problem. Richard wants to see you immediately. He's called an emergency board meeting. Richard Hartwell, Diana's business partner and supposed closest friend, had been with her since the company's founding. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and shared vision, or so she had believed. Diana found Richard in the conference room, his usually perfect silver hair disheveled, his face grim. We've been hacked, he announced without preamble. Someone got into our core systems and stole the proprietary algorithms for the medical AI. The words hit like a physical blow. That's impossible. Our security is compromised. Richard's voice was flat. The board is meeting in 2 hours. There's talk of postponing the IPO, possibly indefinitely. Tech Titan Corp. is already claiming we stole their research. Diana sank into a chair, her mind racing through implications. Tech Titan was their primary competitor, a massive corporation with unlimited legal resources. If they could prove theft, even theft from Diana's own company made to look like Diana had stolen from them, it would destroy everything she'd built. How bad is it? Bad enough that Marcus Webb is calling for your resignation as CEO. Webb, the venture capitalist who led their board, had always been skeptical of Diana's leadership. This crisis would give him exactly the ammunition he needed. Diana spent the morning in damage control mode, but every avenue seemed blocked. Her head of security insisted the breach was impossible. Her legal team projected costs that would bankrupt the company even if they won. Her technical staff couldn't explain how someone had penetrated systems that should have been impregnable. It was nearly noon when she remembered Michael's note about medical device security. A desperate idea began to form. She found him in the building's mechanical room, checking HVAC systems with methodical precision. In his maintenance uniform, surrounded by pipes and electrical panels, he looked nothing like the surgeon he'd once been. But Diana had learned to see past surfaces. Michael, I need your help. He looked up, surprised. With what? My company's been hacked. Someone stole our medical AI algorithms, and they're trying to claim we stole from them. You mentioned you used to research medical device security. Michael's expression grew thoughtful. I published some papers on cybersecurity vulnerabilities in cardiac monitoring systems, but that was years ago. I'm sure your people... My people are stumped. Richard says we're looking at complete corporate destruction, if we can't prove our innocence. What makes you think I could help where your experts couldn't? Diana took a breath, about to cross a line she couldn't uncross. Because you see things others miss. Because you saved my life in that elevator by staying calm when I couldn't. Because sometimes an outsider's perspective is exactly what's needed. Michael studied her for a long moment. Show me what you have. An hour later, they sat in Diana's office. Michael's trained eyes scanning through technical reports that might as well have been hieroglyphics to most people. He'd shed his maintenance uniform for a spare shirt from his locker, and the transformation was startling. This was the man who had once commanded operating rooms, who had published research that advanced cardiac care by decades. This isn't a hack, he said finally. What do you mean? The breach patterns, the specific files accessed, the timing. This is an inside job. Someone with administrative access downloaded these files systematically over the past 6 months. Diana's blood chilled. That's impossible. The only people with that level of access are myself, Richard, and 2 department heads. Michael's expression was grim. Then one of those 4 people is not who you think they are. The realization hit like a physical blow. Someone she trusted completely had been systematically stealing from her own company, setting her up for corporate assassination. Can you prove it? Give me access to your server logs in 24 hours. Diana hesitated. She was about to give complete system access to a man she'd known for less than 2 weeks. Someone who worked as building maintenance? Someone whose entire life story she knew only through fragments and a child's fierce loyalty. Why would you help me? You don't owe me anything. Michael's smile was sad. Because I know what it's like to be destroyed by people you trusted, and because Sophia likes you. Her judgment of character is better than mine. As Michael worked through the night analyzing server logs, he discovered something that made his hands shake. The IP address traces led back to a law firm computer, the same firm that had destroyed his medical career. Someone was using Diana's company as a weapon against them both. At 3 a.m., he looked up with the expression of someone who had found exactly what he was looking for, and something far worse. It was Richard, he said quietly. But Diana, there's more. The law firm coordinating this attack is Brennan, Walsh, and Associates. They're the ones who destroyed my medical practice with that false malpractice suit. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Diana felt her world tilt, everything solid becoming fluid. That's not possible. Richard's been my partner for 8 years. He's my closest friend. Michael turned his laptop screen toward her, showing a pattern of file access that painted an unmistakable picture. He's been downloading your proprietary algorithms for 6 months and feeding them to Tech Titan. But here's what's really disturbing. The coordination timeline suggests this was planned from the beginning. Someone's been playing a very long game. Michael's deeper analysis revealed that Diana's company had been targeted for acquisition from its founding. Richard's involvement wasn't opportunistic, it was strategic. Tech Titan had placed him as an inside asset years ago, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Diana stared at the evidence, her mind struggling to process betrayal this complete. Why would he do this? We were about to make hundreds of millions together. Because Tech Titan offered him more than money. They offered him control of the merged companies, and they had leverage over him. Michael pulled up financial records that painted a devastating picture. Richard has gambling debts approaching $2 million. Tech Titan's been paying his markers while he fed them information. The board meeting was in 6 hours. Diana could present Michael's evidence, expose Richard's treachery, and save her company. But the man who had discovered the truth was someone the board would never take seriously. A janitor making accusations against a founding partner, unless they knew who he really was. Diana looked across her desk at Michael Torres, saw the man he had been and the man he could be again, and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. I need you to come to the board meeting as my cybersecurity consultant. Diana, I can't. You can and you will, because this company isn't just my life's work. It's technology that could save thousands of lives, and the only person who can save it is sitting right here. Michael was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old pain and new possibility. If I do this, there's no going back. Once I step out of the shadows, Sophia and I will be exposed again. There will be questions, probably media attention. Are you sure this is what you want? Diana thought of Sophia's homework spread across the lobby table, of the child's fierce pride in her father, of the man who had talked her through panic with steady competence, and was now offering to risk his carefully constructed safety for a company that wasn't even his. Yes, she said. I'm sure. The boardroom on the 42nd floor buzzed with tension as Manhattan's early morning light streamed through windows that typically showcased Diana's power, but today felt more like the setting for her execution. Marcus Webb sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, his silver hair gleaming under recessed lighting, his expression carrying the satisfied air of a man about to witness a competitor's downfall. Richard Hartwell occupied his usual seat to Diana's right, his perfectly pressed navy suit and concerned expression masking what Michael's evidence had revealed as months of calculated betrayal. The other board members, 6 venture capitalists and tech industry veterans who collectively controlled Diana's fate, studied their tablets with the focused intensity of surgeons examining a terminal diagnosis. Ladies, gentlemen, Webb's voice cut through the morning quiet, we're here to address what may be the most serious crisis in our company's history. The theft of our proprietary algorithms threatens not only our upcoming IPO, but our very existence. Diana sat perfectly straight, her charcoal blazer armor against the coming storm, but her hands remained steady as she arranged her presentation materials. Beside her lay Michael's analysis, 30 pages of technical evidence that could either save her company or be dismissed as the desperate gambit of a CEO grasping at straws. Richard, please brief the board on the situation. Richard stood with the smooth confidence that had made him one of Silicon Valley's most respected executives. At approximately 3 a.m. yesterday, our security systems detected unauthorized access to our core servers. The hackers specifically targeted our medical AI algorithms. 8 years of proprietary research representing hundreds of millions in development costs. He clicked to his first slide, showing system breach timestamps that Michael had proven were fabricated. The attack was sophisticated, suggesting corporate espionage rather than opportunistic hacking. Tech Titan Corp has already filed preliminary injunctions, claiming we stole their research. What's our legal exposure? Asked Janet Morrison, the board member whose venture capital firm had invested $50 million in Diana's company. Potentially catastrophic, Richard replied with practiced gravity. If Tech Titan can prove intellectual property theft, we're looking at hundreds of millions in damages, plus complete destruction of our market credibility. Webb leaned forward. Diana, what's your assessment of how this happened under your leadership? The question carried accusation wrapped in corporate politeness. Diana felt the familiar weight of being the only woman in a room of powerful men, each one secretly wondering if she was finally proving their doubts correct. The preliminary evidence suggests this wasn't an external hack, she said carefully, her voice gaining strength with each word. What do you mean? Webb's eyebrows rose. Diana took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. I mean, someone with administrative access downloaded these files systematically over 6 months. This was an inside job. The room exploded in shocked murmurs. Richard's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. Diana, that's an extremely serious accusation. Do you have proof? I do. Diana's voice gained strength. But first, I'd like to introduce the cybersecurity expert who analyzed our systems. She gestured toward the door where Michael waited. Dr. Michael Torres. The man who entered the boardroom bore little resemblance to the janitor who had cleaned these same floors 12 hours earlier. Michael wore his single remaining suit, charcoal wool that had once cost $3,000, and still carried the authority of someone accustomed to life and death decisions. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his posture straight and confident. Most importantly, his eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had commanded operating rooms where hesitation meant death. Dr. Torres, Diana continued, is a former cardiac surgeon and published researcher in medical device cybersecurity. He's analyzed our breach and identified the real culprit. Webb frowned, his business instincts sharpening. I don't understand. Where did you find this consultant? He's not on any of our approved vendor lists. Michael stepped forward, his voice carrying the calm authority Diana remembered from the elevator. Mr. Webb, members of the board, I've spent the past 18 hours analyzing your system logs, metadata, and access patterns. What you're dealing with isn't a hack. It's systematic intellectual property theft by someone with legitimate administrative credentials. He moved to the presentation screen with the fluid confidence of someone who had briefed medical teams on countless procedures. The breach patterns show clearly that someone downloaded specific files over 6 months, always during off hours, always from terminals with administrative access. Richard shifted uncomfortably, beads of perspiration appearing on his forehead. That's an interesting theory, but without knowing who. The access logs are quite specific, Michael interrupted, his tone professional but implacable. User ID R. Hartwell accessed these files on 47 different occasions between March and September, downloading proprietary algorithms worth an estimated $200 million. The silence in the room was deafening. Every eye turned to Richard, whose confident mask finally cracked. This is ridiculous, Richard stammered, his voice rising slightly. Diana, you can't seriously be accusing me based on some consultant's analysis of... Dr. Torres isn't just a consultant, Diana said quietly. He's a former attending cardiac surgeon at Mount Sinai, published researcher in medical device security, and quite possibly one of the most brilliant diagnosticians I've ever encountered. Webb's expression had shifted from skepticism to sharp interest, his venture capitalist instincts recognizing competence when he saw it. Dr. Torres, if I may ask, why are you working as a security consultant rather than practicing medicine? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Michael could retreat into vague explanations, protect his privacy, maintain the safe anonymity he'd built around himself and Sophia. Or he could trust these strangers with the truth that had cost him everything once before. Michael looked at Diana, saw her steady encouragement, and made his choice. 2 years ago, I was targeted by a frivolous malpractice lawsuit while my wife was dying of cancer. I refused to settle because I had done nothing wrong. Fighting the case cost me my savings, which were already depleted by experimental cancer treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. By the time I was exonerated, my wife was dead, my practice was destroyed, and my 8-year-old daughter needed stability more than I needed career vindication. The room was absolutely still. These were people accustomed to corporate warfare, but raw human truth, spoken with quiet dignity, was something else entirely. I chose manual labor because it allowed me to be present for my daughter while I rebuilt our lives. But I never stopped being a doctor, just like these algorithms never stopped being Diana's intellectual property, no matter who stole them. Michael's voice hardened as he continued. What's particularly interesting is that the law firm that destroyed my medical career, Brennan, Walsh & Associates, is the same firm now representing Tech Titan Corp in their accusations against this company. It appears someone has been orchestrating a very sophisticated, very personal attack. The revelation hit the room like a thunderclap. Webb's expression transformed from skepticism to fascination as the scope of the conspiracy became clear. Janet Morrison leaned forward. Dr. Torres, you said you could prove the theft came from inside the company. Do you have definitive evidence? Michael nodded, his presentation shifting to technical details that painted an undeniable picture. Mr. Hartwell's access pattern shows systematic downloading of specific files, always immediately after Diana uploaded new research. The timestamps correlate exactly with Tech Titan's development milestones, which they're now claiming as their original work. Furthermore, he continued, pulling up financial records, the staged hack yesterday was designed to cover Mr. Hartwell's tracks by creating the appearance of external breach. But we can trace payments from Tech Titan subsidiaries to offshore accounts controlling Mr. Hartwell's gambling debts. $2.3 million over 8 months. Richard's face had gone ashen. The careful composure that had defined his career was crumbling in real time. This is character assassination, Richard said desperately. Diana, how can you trust some random consultant over your founding partner? Because, a small voice said from the doorway, my daddy doesn't lie. Every head turned to see Sophia standing in the entrance, her school backpack still on her shoulders, her chin raised with 8-year-old defiance. Sophia, Michael started toward her, concern flickering across his features. You're supposed to be. Mrs. Chen's meeting ended early. I came to bring you lunch. She held up a brown paper bag, then looked directly at Richard with the devastating honesty children possess. And I heard you calling my daddy a liar. The sight of a child in this corporate battleground should have been jarring, but somehow Sophia's presence brought clarity rather than chaos. Her fierce loyalty to her father, her simple conviction that truth mattered, cut through the morning's corporate maneuvering like a blade. Young lady, Webb said gently, this is a private meeting. Mr. Webb, Diana interrupted, Sophia has every right to defend her father, especially since her father just saved our company. She turned to Richard, her voice carrying steel wrapped in silk. Richard, would you like to explain why Tech Titan's CEO called me yesterday offering to resolve this misunderstanding for a mere $100 million licensing fee? Remarkably specific offer for someone who supposedly discovered our theft independently. Richard's remaining composure cracked completely. His hands shook as he gripped the edge of the conference table. Diana, you don't understand the pressure. Tech Titan threatened to destroy me if I didn't cooperate. The gambling debts were crushing me. My wife, my children, I couldn't let them find out. And then they offered a way out, said it would just be a partnership, a merger of equals. So you chose to destroy me instead. The words fell like stones into still water. 8 years of partnership, friendship, shared dreams, and late-night strategy sessions, all of it built on sand. But Sophia stepped forward, her young voice cutting through the adult drama with surprising wisdom. Mr. Richard, lying is always wrong, but Daddy says people who make mistakes can choose to fix them instead of making them worse. Richard looked down at this remarkable child, and something in his expression shifted. I never wanted it to go this far, he said quietly. I thought maybe we could work out some kind of partnership with Tech Titan. Share the technology. Everyone wins. The technology that saves lives isn't something you negotiate with extortionists, Sophia said matter-of-factly. Daddy taught me that helping bad people just makes more bad things happen. Webb cleared his throat, his business instincts taking control. Mr. Hartwell, I think it's best if you excuse yourself from the remainder of this meeting. Our legal team will be in contact regarding your immediate resignation and the criminal charges we'll be filing. As Richard gathered his materials with shaking hands, he looked once more at Diana. I never meant to hurt you. I was drowning. The way out of drowning isn't pulling other people under, Diana said softly. It's asking for help. Richard left without another word, his footsteps echoing down the corridor like the end of an era. The board meeting continued for another hour, with Michael presenting evidence so thorough and compelling that Tech Titan's case crumbled under scrutiny. By noon, the crisis that had threatened to destroy Diana's company had transformed into a competitive advantage. They now had legal grounds to sue their largest rival for corporate espionage and racketeering. As the board members filed out, Janet Morrison approached Diana privately. That was impressive crisis management. Your Dr. Torres is remarkable. We should discuss bringing him on permanently as Chief Technology Officer. Someone with his background could revolutionize our medical applications. I'll mention it to him, Diana replied, though she suspected Michael's answer would depend entirely on what mattered most to him: Sophia's happiness and stability. When the boardroom was empty except for Diana, Michael, and Sophia, the weight of what had just occurred settled over them like morning mist. Thank you, Diana said simply. You saved my company. You saved yourself, Michael replied. I just provided the technical analysis. Daddy, Sophia interjected with the impatience children reserve for adults who miss obvious truths. Diana needs us now, and we need her too. Diana looked down at this remarkable child who had somehow seen what the adults had been too complicated to recognize, that some things mattered more than corporate structures and professional boundaries. Sophia's right, Diana said softly. I do need you, both of you, not just as employees or consultants, but as family, I guess. Michael's expression grew thoughtful. Diana, my life isn't what it used to be. Sophia and I live in a modest apartment in Brooklyn. I drive a 10-year-old Toyota. My idea of a sophisticated evening is helping her with algebra homework while we watch nature documentaries. That sounds perfect, Diana said, and realized she meant it. 3 months later, Diana stood in the kitchen of the house they'd bought together in Park Slope. Not the Manhattan penthouse she'd once thought necessary for success, but a narrow brownstone with enough room for Sophia's art supplies, Michael's medical journals, and the kind of family dinners Diana had never imagined possible. The IPO had proceeded exactly as planned, valuing their company at $800 million. Tech Titan had settled their lawsuit for a sum that made even Diana's accountant smile, and Michael had accepted the position of Chief Medical Technology Officer with enthusiasm that surprised everyone, including himself. But the real victory hadn't been financial. It had been learning that success without people to share it was just expensive loneliness. Sophia sat at their kitchen table, working on a science project about the cardiovascular system, while Michael prepared dinner and Diana reviewed quarterly projections. The scene was utterly domestic and absolutely perfect. Daddy, Sophia said, looking up from her anatomical drawings, when you and Diana get married, can I help plan the wedding? Michael paused in his cooking, and Diana's laptop screen suddenly became very interesting. Sophia, Michael said carefully, Diana and I haven't discussed. Oh, please, Sophia interrupted with 8-year-old exasperation. You look at each other the way people do in movies right before they kiss. And Diana taught me how to braid my hair this morning while humming wedding songs. I was not humming wedding songs, Diana protested weakly. Here Comes the Bride counts as a wedding song, Sophia replied with devastating logic. Michael set down his spatula and turned to face Diana, his expression serious but warm. Diana Richardson, are you humming wedding songs because you're thinking about marrying a former doctor who currently runs medical technology and comes with a precocious 8-year-old who asks impossible questions? Diana closed her laptop and stood, smoothing her casual jeans. Another change that would have shocked her former self. Michael Torres, I'm humming wedding songs because I've learned that the most important things in life can't be scheduled or optimized or controlled. They can only be recognized when they find you. Is that a yes? Sophia demanded. That's a yes, Diana laughed as Michael crossed the kitchen to take her in his arms. Good, Sophia said with satisfaction, returning to her homework. I already picked out my dress. 8 months later, they stood in the small garden behind their brownstone, now decorated with flowers Sophia had helped choose And guess who had become genuinely extended family? Diana wore a simple ivory dress that moved easily in the spring breeze, her hair down for once, her expression radiant with contentment that had nothing to do with stock prices or market valuations. Michael stood beside her in a dark blue suit, no longer hiding his medical background, but wearing it as part of a complex identity that included father, partner, and the kind of man who would sacrifice everything for the people he loved. But it was Sophia who stole the ceremony, walking down the garden path in her yellow dress, carrying a basket of rose petals and speaking her carefully prepared words. Daddy used to be sad because Mommy couldn't stay with us. Diana used to be lonely because she thought work was the same as family. But now Daddy smiles when he makes breakfast, and Diana laughs when she helps me with homework. And I have two parents who love me and each other and understand that the best things in life aren't things at all. As the small gathering of friends and family applauded, Diana felt tears streaming down her face, not from sadness or stress, but from joy so complete it seemed impossible that she had ever thought success could be measured in dollars or market dominance. They also taught me, Sophia continued, her voice carrying across the garden, that when good people help each other, they can fix anything, even things that seem broken forever. Later, as they danced to music Sophia had chosen and ate cake she had helped bake, Diana looked around their garden at the life they had built together and realized she had finally learned the difference between achievement and fulfillment. "Any regrets?" Michael murmured as they swayed together under string lights that Sophia had insisted were absolutely necessary for magic. Diana looked at her new husband, at Sophia teaching the neighbors' children an elaborate dance she'd invented, at the modest but warm home that felt more valuable than any penthouse. "Only one," she said, "that it took me 34 years to understand that the most successful life isn't the one you build alone. It's the one you build together." Sophia appeared beside them, tugging on Diana's dress with the urgency that accompanies 8-year-old announcements. "Mom, Diana, I mean," she paused, considering, then smiled. "Mom, the cake is almost gone, and Mrs. Patterson wants to know if you'll share your secret ingredient." Diana knelt to Sophia's level, her heart still catching every time she heard that word. "Mom, the secret ingredient isn't in the cake, sweetheart. It's in making sure the people you love are around to share it." Sophia considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important matters. "That's a good secret. Can we make more cake tomorrow?" "Every day if you want," Diana promised, and meant it. As the evening wound down and their guests departed with full hearts and leftover cake, the three of them sat on their front steps, watching the Brooklyn neighborhood settle into comfortable evening rhythms. Sophia leaned against Diana's shoulder while Michael's arm circled them both, creating a circle of warmth against the spring chill. "Home," Sophia said contentedly, echoing a word that had once meant something entirely different to all of them. "Home," Diana agreed, understanding finally that success wasn't measured in square footage or stock valuations, but in moments exactly like this, when the people you loved chose to stay. In the distance, the Manhattan skyline glittered with the dreams of ambitious people working late into the night, chasing achievements that felt crucial in the moment. Diana had once been one of them, believing that reaching the top meant climbing alone. Now she knew better. The view was infinitely more beautiful when you had someone's hand to hold and someone small enough to lift up so they could see it too.